Herausforderungen in Wissenschaft, Kultur und Journalismus. Wissenschaft und Kultur haben wir bereits ausgiebig hier auf dem Podium bereits besprochen. Bleibt also der Teil und der Fokus auf den Journalisten und den Journalismus. Ich freue mich gleich sehr auf eine Runde mit vielen Kollegen und deren Ausführungen. Aber natürlich beginnen wir auch den dritten Teil, auch das dritte Podium wieder mit einer Keynote. Und es ist ein Herr, der für den Journalismus und für seinen Mut bezahlen musste. Er war ehemaliger Geschäftsführer von Meydan TV, einer unabhängige Online-Nachrichtenplattform in Aserbaidschan. Für diese Arbeit, für diese kritische Arbeit, so wie man es von jedem Journalisten erwartet, wurde er von der Regierung von Aserbaidschan inhaftiert für 2,5 Jahre lang. Ich freue mich sehr, dass er hier heute in Hamburg ist und freue mich auf seine Ausführungen. Meine Damen und Herren, bitte begrüßen Sie mit mir Emin Milli.
Thank you very much for invitation, and I thought until now, what should I talk about? So I have no prepared speech, and I was listening while I was taking care of my daughter. Bits of discussions here, and yeah, I will try to tell you what my experiences have been here in exile in Germany, which still continues. How we founded Meydan TV in Germany, here in Berlin, not here exactly, but in Berlin, and why I left Meydan TV. Really several weeks ago. So it was 2013 when I started talking about the need of independent media for Azerbaijan in exile. Basically every journalist, every activist in Azerbaijan I knew was against it. They said, we don't need it. You know, that's a crazy idea. Every donor, every international friend, and I think I was quite well connected back then, they were all against it. Like, nobody said that it is useful, it can work. And 6 years later, Meydan TV is the leading independent media in Azerbaijan. It has 10–20% of audience every week of the entire population of Azerbaijan. 90% of its viewers based in Azerbaijan. And journalists who work for this openly or secretly are inside of Azerbaijan, but also scattered around the world. So it worked. It worked, but of course it also worked because, not because just one man wanted this, but also there were many other great journalists, activists who trained themselves to be journalists, and that's very important because we didn't, from the very beginning, we decided that it's not going to be an activist platform, it should become a professional independent media platform. So a lot of people risked a lot, sacrificed a lot to make this happen, but it did happen. And today it's really has, in my view, very important influence on politics in Azerbaijan, and it has dramatic effect on lives of people. Like, we have thousands of cases where reporting of Meydan TV actually changed lives of people. The individual social or economic problems are being solved because government then tries to solve these problems, like ministries or agencies or local governments, or because just fellow citizens come together and try to help those people that we report about. Also in Berlin, you know, it was not a German state or government that believed or supported Meydan TV. It was actually, I have to say, there was in Berlin a friend of my wife, Heike, she's a photographer. So when we came in, we needed a place to live. We had no place and we had no money. And she said, she had 3 rooms. So we could, with my wife, we could live in that one room. And she said, you shouldn't pay. We were just forcing her to pay 100 euro, just at least to pay some electricity or water bills. So it is not that she has to pay for us, because she was not a rich person or anything, you know, didn't have any extra money to support us. And it is her, or then there was another friend, artist Nikki, where we actually, it was fun. She was living in her kind of with her a father of her child, and in a different place, and she was giving the flat, which was Bohemian, a fantastic flat, just on Rosa Luxemburg Platz, to us, and we were paying almost nothing for that, just its own, you know, price. And that's how I lived. I could afford this, you know, living in Berlin and creating something. And then there were people like Christian Mier, who is not here, from Reporters Without Borders, someone who later told me that when I told him first that I want to create independent media for Azerbaijan, he didn't tell me back then, but told me later. He thought I'm totally mad person, and a lot of people come to Germany and all of them want to create TV and media or whatever, but in most cases all this hot air is gone after several months. You know, but also because of people like him, it happened. And Leon, who is here as well, Leon, where are you? Oh, here. So Leon remembers when he came to Berlin. Leon is from Free Press Unlimited. He will speak at this circle here later. When he came to Berlin, I remember he was, we didn't even have a proper website. We just had some ugly handmade website. And when he came, we just launched a new website. And we were looking for some money to pay the website. I told the people who made the website, I have money, so they should make it. But in reality, I didn't have money at all. So I just gave him 2,000 euros from crowdfunding we did, but I owed them 13,000 euros more, and I had no idea where to give that money. And this is when God sent me Leon, and he went to a seller in Berlin, which is, I can say now, was another German NGO, which gave it to us for free in Neukölln. So where Leon had very big difficulty to get in because he's very tall, and that seller was not designed for very tall people. And that's how in this cellar, and with people who just came from nowhere, you know, by a lot of luck and coincidence. So it's not just courage, vision, sacrifices, professionalism, I don't know, all these good things, but also a lot of luck that enabled all of this. Why I'm telling all this? I was listening to speeches here today, and I think people, institutions that help people like us in exile, these are, you know, saint people. This is really an amazing cause to help other people in such a way. And I think this is why I think we all still don't lose hope in our hope in humanity, you know, because people like this exist, organizations like this exist that promote the good. And that's very good. And without these kind of people, foundations, institutions, projects like Meydan TV would never be possible. But what I miss, and here I want to come to one of the reasons why I left Meydan TV. What I miss is something that I'm going to talk about now. So when I started Meydan TV, I wanted to, from the day one, I had a dream to leave Meydan TV as institution behind. So to do everything I can, and then to leave a team behind. Hi, Sarah, this is my daughter. To leave a team behind that can run this, and it will not be a project of one person. And for me, it is very important because I'm coming from a country and from a region where if you're in government, you are forever. If you're opposition leader, you're opposition leader till the end of your life. If you are chairman of NGO, non-government organization, it can be 30, 40 years or again for the rest of your life that you are just in this one position. And my dream was always to, even symbolically, but to break this stereotype or this culture that we're coming and we're staying in this one position for the rest of our lives. I know for you it's ridiculous. Many of you change positions, every 3, 5, 10 years, I don't know. But in our countries, in our region, it's unfortunately not always the case. And so after 6 years, I felt that Meydan TV did the impossible. We reached, we have built a small institution that works very well. But I felt that I personally cannot give anything more to Meydan TV because internationally we reached the ceiling of what support we can get from Meydan TV. Because every room I walk in, everyone kind of walks at me, what else do you want? You have everything. And recently there was a meeting in Berlin government, so they invited some, media, Exile, journalists, media outlets, and after listening to everyone in this circle, after they made their comments, and I kind of decided not to talk because if I start to talk about Meydan TV's problems, they seem like luxury problems in this context of exile media and exile journalists. The attitude is you have achieved so much, we have done, so much for you, what else can we do for you? There is really, on the current framework and international system of support for independent media projects like Meydan TV, you can't get more. And I think this is very sad because we are coming down to the problem where international assistance is allocating very little money to independent media. Despite of all this, what you hear, fake news and this propaganda coming from dictatorships, in fact, in my view, from what I know, not just in Azerbaijan, but also in Eurasia at least, that's my region where I work, where I have colleagues, where we met and talked about it for years, a lot can be done. So Meydan TV with 10-20% audience is not a limit of what we could achieve. We could, I believe, get to 50-60% of audience in Azerbaijan, which I believe would mean political, economic, social, cultural changes. But the system is built in such a way that nobody is really interested in this, and it's really hard to explain because I don't want to sound unthankful or ungrateful. I am extremely thankful and extremely grateful to every foundation or individuals that helped us, and we are their shining example of success. But from many discussions and meetings and efforts I had, I have a feeling like when we talk about this international liberal order, there are certain projects, ideas, and individual cases, and even, systematically some projects are helped with, but I can't refuse to have this feeling that sometimes, there is no strategy, there is no kind of mechanism to enable projects, for example, like Meydan TV, which are already successful, to push them to the limit, to get 50-60% of audience, with more resources. So no matter how successful you are, you're reaching your ceiling that you cannot, go beyond. And I think it shouldn't be like that. I think it can be changed. And what I miss, again, and with this I want to finish my talk, I miss these strategies, I miss this will and this vision to create victories in countries like Azerbaijan, like Russia, like Belarus, there are a lot of, again, foundations and people who help people in need, like me. And again, I'm extremely thankful and grateful for that. And it should exist. This is just, something of the best parts of the world we're living in. But on the other hand, we need to look at opportunities. We need to be bold. We need to dream of bigger victories, and these victories are possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Emin Milli for recounting his experience here in Germany for us, and of course wishing you continued luck in your future endeavors, whatever may come. We're very curious to see what other projects, initiatives you will put forth. Für die kommende Stunde, für die nächsten 60 Minuten freue ich mich jetzt sehr auf ein spannendes Panel. Journalismus im Exil in Kooperation mit Reporter ohne Grenzen. Deswegen freue ich mich sehr auf den Referent für Pressearbeit von Reporter ohne Grenzen, Christoph Dreyer. Ich freue mich auf den Journalisten und Koordinator des Journalists for Democracy in Sri Lanka, Bashana Abeywardena. Der Journalist in seinem Heimatland Sri Lanka war, dort die synagelische Wochenzeitschrift Hiru gegründet hatte und aufgrund dieser kritischen Arbeit dann letztlich zwangsweise Sri Lanka verlassen musste und seit 2006 in Deutschland im Exil lebt. Ich freue mich sehr, den bereits angesprochenen Leon Willems, Geschäftsführer von Free Press Unlimited. Free Press Unlimited ist eine Organisation, die in mehr als 30 Ländern aktiv ist und sich unter anderem auf die Sicherheit von und für Journalisten fokussiert. Ich freue mich sehr auf den syrisch-palästinensischen Dichter und Journalisten und Kurator Ramy Al-Asheq. Ramy Al-Asheq hat ein Aufenthaltsstipendium von der Heinrich-Böll-Stiftung, vom Heinrich-Böll-Haus erhalten und lebt seitdem in Deutschland. Seit 2017 hat er das deutsch-arabische Kulturmagazin Fun ins Leben gerufen. Und last but not least freue ich mich sehr auf den Moderator der heutigen Runde, ein sehr renommierter Journalist, der gerade hier in Hamburg natürlich größte Aufmerksamkeit genießt. Seit 1994 bis 2014, ganze 10 Jahre lang, war er Chefredakteur des Reportermagazins Geo. Er gehört dem Kuratorium von Reporter 20 sogar. Entschuldigung, Sie sehen noch so jung aus, deswegen habe ich mich in der Zahl versäumt. Ganze 20 Jahre lang bei heutigen Maßstäben fast unvorstellbar. Eine große Leistung in der Tat. Er gehört dem Kuratorium von Reporter ohne Grenzen an und ist Mitglied des Stiftungsrates der Körber-Stiftung, Peter-Matthias Gaede, an dem ich jetzt auch übergebe.
And to add something, he is miserable in English, but we switch to English now. So Emin took some of our time, and we have 4 participants on the podium, which is why I don't want to make a long preface. Just one sentence of Edward Williams said, actually Edward Wadi Said, I would like to put in front. He was an US American of Palestinian origin. Exile is an unhealable rift forced between a human being and a native place, between the self and its true home. Its essential sadness can never be surmounted. The reality of being in between has become a defining moment for those who have left and for those who have become their hosts. Being in between can be experienced as a social and cultural no man's land. No one can predict how permanent or temporary this new relation will be, but under all circumstances, it makes sense to listen to each other, to perceive and to see each other. So let's listen to us. Ramy, you were born in a Palestinian refugee family. You lived in Syria as a refugee. You reported demonstrations against Assad. You ended up in prison. You lived in Jordan as a refugee. You fled to Germany. Yet, in an interview, you said, refugee is not my identity. That sounds surprising. Does that mean that after 6 years in Germany, you no longer feel like you were in no man's land, that you no longer feel in between, that you have arrived? How would you describe your identity? What gives you identity?
Thank you for the question. Good evening. First of all, I want to apologize. I'm sorry that we are 4 male on stage. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Don't blame us for that, please.
No, it's a problem in the structure of the whole journalism scene. Like all the chefredaktoren, all the main big positions are male, so we are sorry for that. Regarding to the question, when I mean that I don't see refugee as my identity, that doesn't mean that I don't live it. I do live it, but this is my statement, or like this is my status, I could say. It's not my identity, because this should be ended. It should have an end.
Yeah.
Well, I was born as a refugee. My father was born as a refugee, and until now he lives in Damascus as a refugee. But this should be a status. No one should be born and live his or like her own life, or like whole life as a refugee. So it's not my identity. And this is also a reaction when I am on stage. It's always, since this past 5 years, always presented as refugee author, refugee artist.
Yeah.
Sometimes even without artist or author, it's always just refugee. This is your own identity and your name, and this is everything, what matter your background, your history, your achievement, whatever. This is the brand you have. So it also was for me an interesting or an important point to say, no, I'm not a refugee by identity, but this is my statement and my status now, and I'm not ashamed about it. It's not my fault. There are 70 million refugees. This is not my fault, but this is at the same time not my identity. Yeah.
So can you describe the process of arriving in Germany? I mean, what did you bring with you? What did you left behind?
This is a big question. Well, I came with an open hand, I could say, and open eyes, and I felt the first moment I arrived in Köln airport, the policeman asked me, "This is the first time you come to Germany?" And I said, "This is the first time I leave my home." And he said, "You are welcome. Germany will be your second home." This was a very emotional, let's say, shock for me, but it didn't continue, unfortunately. So I'm looking for this policeman, please. 3rd of November 2014, a policeman who said that. I really want to see him because this never have been repeated. Yeah, so I was faced with this very positive thing, and then I was faced with a lot of struggling, and knew from the beginning. I mean, in my country, I was struggling. I know my enemy. I was struggling against dictatorship and the Islamist group. But then it's totally different new level. It needs totally different new structure. But at the same time, I came with all of my passion to do something, because I don't want to be useless. So luckily, I was saved by Körber-Stiftung when they saved me from Jordan to come to Germany as an author. But I faced the reality that there is no media for Arabic speakers. Yeah. So this how it came to create the first Arabic newspaper in Germany, which ended 2017, and then we made the bilingual magazine, Fan. It's Arabic and German cultural magazine.
Let me ask for the topics. What does a change of location, whether it be temporary or forever, what does it mean for the topics you are writing about?
As a journalist, we are always writing about current issues. The perspective sometimes it changes, because when you're outside of a place, you look at the stuff in a different way. But it's for me necessary to write journalistic pieces or even opinion pieces, because this is what I cannot describe in my poetry, because poetry can't be direct and so informative. But of course, I mean, my interest and my focus has been developed in a way I can see a lot of topics I never saw before when I was in my country. For example, I had no idea about the involvement of the bank systems, or even every individual in Europe who put their money in the banks which invest in weapons, for example. This is a very important topic now for me. It wasn't before. And even in my writing, it's reflected.
And the audience you are writing for, is it that one more or less that you left behind? Is it still in your mind? Is it to an imaginary old home? Or is it a new one? Do you see yourself as a kind of a mediator between the worlds?
I think it's both of them. It depends about the topic and about the language I'm addressing in. And I think because of that, it was necessary for us to create a voice or platform to where we express ourselves. Because unfortunately, the German media were all the time focusing, okay, you are a journalist, or you're an author, or you're from a refugee background, then come and write. I wrote in several German media, but write about your story. Tell us how you came to Germany. Tell us how much you suffered. But when it comes to realistic, real journalistic work, this is not your business. We have the good people for
And
that.
you fight against?
Well, basically, you cannot really fight, but if there is all of this kind of bubbles, you create your own bubble. And this is what I did.
Bashana, you too have experienced threat in your biography. You were co-founder and editor of the weekly magazine Hero in Sri Lanka. Your critical columns have put you at a risk. What exactly was enough for that? What was enough for being in danger?
Well, I became a journalist in 1992, and it has never been safe to be a journalist in Sri Lanka. But people managed to, I mean, the people who were in the profession, they managed to always put up with the situation and to continue. And there you don't get kind of formal warnings, letters or something like that. You are guided by your instinct, actually, after living through a violent kind of situation for about 30, 40 years. Then you instinctively know how to move around. And until 2006, I never had this feeling to leave, actually. And I was asked to leave several times by friends who were inside the country, and also the friends I had outside the country. But my fear was always like, if I leave, I won't be able to come back. And that was my fear.
When you decided to go to Germany, why was it Germany? Who helped you in this decision?
Well, it was I mean, like accidental, I would say.
Yeah.
It was not chosen from a list of countries.
Okay.
The way it happened was, actually, I have been visiting Germany for different various meetings, conferences, even before. So because of that, I had friends here. And they were the ones who were trying to get me out of the country. And actually, it was a German who went to Sri Lanka to bring me out of the country, because I was not able to leave through the airport on my own. So a person who was working for the Munster Theology Institute went from here to bring me out, and he was there for one day, actually on his birthday. He said he had the longest birthday because of the time difference. And so he brought me out of the country. And I was asked to apply for 2 months visa, but in fact I applied for 1 month visa.
Was it a kind of a birthday for you too? What were your first impressions or your first experiences in Germany?
Well, I mean, the first time I came to Germany was in 1996. And since then I have been coming different. So it was, I mean, I was a little bit used to the situation. Okay. I mean, but not as a kind of person who would not return, would not be able to return. So there was a huge difference, and leaving my family behind, my parents and everyone I knew, the friends I was working with. And I had this fear, I mean, it was working all the time, that this might be the last time.
Okay.
And for example, my father passed away in 2011, and so I wasn't able to go back. And so the thing is, I mean, I still remember, I mean, one thing, it's quite personal thing actually. So my friends wanted, I mean, they asked me whether I wanted to see the kind of funeral rites on Skype. And I said no. And because I simply wanted to keep the memories as it was before. But a friend was holding a phone, and I could hear my sister and my mother was weeping. And when my father's body was buried, I heard from the phone people throwing earth onto the coffin. And that was I thought, okay, this is the price, this is the biggest price. And I never thought that moment I never think about actually. I mean, I knew that there was always this kind of dangers because they were getting older. And then it started, some other friends, I mean, who were with me outside, they also started going through the same process. And none of us were able to return. So it was a kind of, I mean, but one thing I wanted to say is that, I mean, the life in exile was a kind of living in a waiting room, hoping that one day the door will be opened and your name will be called back. And so it was long waiting actually still. Yeah.
Perhaps more clearly than Ramy, you still work as a journalist primarily for your home country, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as an online journalist and coordinator of journalists for democracy in Sri Lanka. How many exiled journalists from Sri Lanka are in this network, and in which countries?
Well, in our group, there are about 32 who are living in Europe, actually, in 6 countries. But generally, there are more journalists, actually, who are living in exile in North America and some other countries as well. And we formed the organization in 2009, so it has been 10 years now. And the thing is that, I mean, we, for the last 10 years, it's quite a, I mean, different experience for us, because we used to meet each other in Colombo, our capital city, quite often, physically.
Yeah, that was my question. How did you get information from your home country, and what do you know about the reactions of the information then back in Sri Lanka?
Well, it was basically because that all of us used to work as journalists, and we still, I mean, we maintain the contacts that we had inside the country. So the information coming from Sri Lanka, it was a matter of basically organizing and coordinating the contacts that we already had. It was not like establishing new contacts, but actually it's activating the contacts that we already had, a network of contacts.
So you're kind of a listening post far away from your home. So do the themes, the topics of your present home come closer to you at the same time? I mean, for example, let's say the European elections or the elections in your town, Bremen.
Yeah.
So is it kind of a mixture, and you as a journalist find out that you are interested in everything, or are you still concentrated about what happens in Colombo?
Well, I mean, like, unavoidably, I am more connected to Sri Lanka, because that's where I was born and grown, and I mean, I was raised and I was politicized. But the politics here, for example, you know, now I live in Bremen, and the politics in Bremen, I mean, what is happening around me and what is happening in Europe has always been a kind of, I'm quite interested about what is happening, because there's always one or another way, it is always have a kind of connection to what is happening inside the country as well. It is, because even though it's an island, it's connected.
Okay. Christoph, as festive occasions, members of the board of Reporters Without Borders like to say that their greatest dream, their greatest desire is to become unnecessary and obsolete. Unfortunately, it doesn't look at all as if they will be sooner or later obsolete. On the other hand, as an employee of Reporters Without Borders, you may have to be careful not to lose all confidence. So now we have two colleagues here from Syria and from Sri Lanka sitting here, from two countries which are or were in a state of war, but after all, they at least made it. But how many can't? So your organization knows the sad numbers of murdered and imprisoned journalists, but how does it make contact with those who have to or want to be rescued?
Well, maybe for those who don't know Reporters Without Borders, very briefly in a nutshell, what the main thing we do is we are a human rights organization focusing on press freedom. So a lot of what we do is draw attention to press freedom violations, to cases of imprisoned journalists, persecution, to bad, dangerous media laws. And of course, an integral part of that is that we help, we provide practical help and assistance to journalists in need, in danger. And the simple cases are journalists who maybe have to go to court in their countries or have to go to hospital because they were beaten up. And so we check the cases, they get in contact with us, we check the cases, and then they mainly need a check to cover the cost of a lawyer or the hospital. Now, the more complicated cases and the ones that occupy us a lot are those who have to flee their countries and end up in Germany or in other countries, but in our case, mainly in Germany, when we deal with them. And many of these journalists have already made their way to Germany on their own, through whatever ways, by applying for asylum.
Not by as active escape aid by the Reporters Without Borders?
No, we don't have the helicopter to fly them out. It does happen that we actually have to help people to get out of their country, but it's not the case very often. Many have already reached Germany, have applied for asylum, have come here through their families, or have, through some other ways, for example, through some training programs of Deutsche Welle Academy, this kind of thing. And then either the situation changes. For example, there was a journalist from Zimbabwe who was here for a training, and then it turned out, it became known that he was on a list of people who were to be arrested, so he had to stay here. And he's still here. And this was, I think, 10 years ago. And or others come to us and say, okay, now I'm here. What can I do? Can you help me? And there are many cases of journalists also who contact us while they're still in their countries and say, okay, or we learn that they're there and they need assistance, and we try, for example, to get some reprieve for them, to get them out for some time, through institutions like the Hamburg Foundation for politically persecuted people, Heinrich Böll Foundation, many other institutions that we are partnering with, and that's often the initial, the start.
So, what would you describe as a success? Do we have successes? For example, the placement of foreign journalists in German media companies. Or is it still a very, very small figure? We are talking about Deutsche Welle. And is that a target of Reporters Without Borders to integrate foreign journalists in their original jobs?
That's a difficult question. And the best success for us, I would say, would be journalists who either don't have to leave their countries in the first place, or can continue after a short break to be in their countries and do their job, or return after some time. So a real success story, for example, was the Democratic Voice of Burma, which is was an exile radio and later TV station from Burma, Myanmar, which was supported mainly by the Norwegian government, but also by our international mother organization, Reporters Without Borders. for quite some time, and when the situation in Myanmar changed, they were able to go back, and now they're working from inside the country. The other kind of success is, I mean, and I'm always torn when we manage to help someone to get out of his country safely, because there are people who were in jail for 2 years, 3 years, maybe were tortured. So it's good to have them out and know they're safe and they're still alive. But of course, they're out of their country and they can't continue their work. And what we saw in our work when we started having our own assistance division, emergency assistance, is that, okay, we got people to Germany and they're here, they're safe, they've got their status. Now what? And the main thing that all these people said is, well, I'm a journalist. I want to continue my work. And I'm here for a cause. I'm here because I wanted to point at what's happening in my country. Yeah. And there was not really much we could do initially for them. We tried, but it was very hard. As Martina Boyle said, it's really hard to cross the language barrier, for example, because it's almost impossible for a non-German speaking journalist to get as good in German as he would need to be to work for German media. So when the 2015, the refugee crisis, the big refugee movement came, a lot started to move because some editorial office started at least offering hospitations for refugee journalists. Others started programs. For example, the Axel Springer School of Journalism is now regularly offering one place for a journalist who has had to fled her country. And there are exile media, and they've become also a lot more visible. They don't have a lot of support structure in Germany, and Leon maybe can talk more about that, but and they've become much more visible because that's a way for journalists to continue work and to also have an effect to their country, for their country.
Yeah. Leon, as the director of Free Press Unlimited in Amsterdam, you are working, let's say, on the same project, more or less, the same idea, the same ideal as Christoph. And one could also mention the International Press Institute, IPI. And like Christoph, you, as a journalist, have made experiences in countries that have never been the brightest stars in the sky of press freedom. You were in the Middle East and the Sub-Sahara zone. You worked for the United Nations for a while, helping to set up independent radio stations in southern Sudan. Well, Free Press Unlimited. We are now even confronted with the opposite, even in EU countries like Poland and Hungary, not to mention what would have blossomed for us if these wet dreams of gentleman Mr. Strache would have come true in Austria. So where do you stand at the moment on the scale between hope and despair?
I think that my definition of success is a little bit different. Actually, it was a documentary filmmaker from the Democratic Voice of Burma, long before the change happened in Myanmar, Burma. I still say Burma, I'm old-fashioned. He went around the world and said, well, what if the transition happens in our country? What should we do? And he was asking all these people, and no one had a real answer, until he met Desmond Tutu, and Desmond Tutu in South Africa, of course. And he asked him, so how can we win this battle? And Desmond Tutu said something which I think is very important for this discussion, because we should not despair. Desmond Tutu said, the people in your country may not know it yet, but you have already won. And I think that that is the way in which I would suggest to approach the issue of exiled media, the issue of the fact that in many countries people are, let's say, butchered by repressive regimes, that actually it is a sign of the fact that change is about to come. And that is my personal reason to invest in the work that I do. And I think actually staying away from notions of despair although I do on the 3rd of May and on the 2nd of November, like RSF, they provide the numbers, we do events in the Netherlands, I say, well, for the 10th year in a row, the number of journalists killed is increasing, the number of legislative closures of the internet is increasing, etc. But I think there's an important notion and it's actually very relevant for exiled media. It is that the notion is that by standing up and saying this is enough, and we're doing something about it, which is actually what attracted me when I visited Emin in his cellar in Berlin, is that probably Azerbaijan ranks still as one of the most closed societies in terms of media. The fact that he had this bold dream to conquer the internet with visual satire, I mean, I felt, you know, I just called home and said, do we have 13,000? Because he missed 13,000. And we said, well, not really, but we'll manage. So we gave it. Because you have to invest in people who have dreams, who have the ambition to change their country.
But
it's a human endeavor that is needed.
Yeah, but your NGO operates in some 30, some 40 countries, I even read.
Yeah, we currently stand at 43.
I guess the majority of these countries
almost
are not
all of them.
easy countries. None where you could have support from governments. So, if necessary, can you do something against governments in these countries? How clandestine is it to be done, or how public can it be?
It varies very much from situation to situation. That is very important to understand, is that it was possible, and it still is possible, to penetrate audiences in Iran through internet. You need technical skilled people, but it's possible. So it's possible to build an exiled radio station, which we did, called Radio Zamane, which actually managed to have a factor of audience in Iran. We currently, since 10 years, is actually since I joined Free Press Unlimited, I started working for Free Press Unlimited by setting up Radio De Banga, which serves around 2 million listeners on a daily basis in Sudan. And if you would ask me 9 months ago what was my take on the situation in Sudan, I would have told you that actually 3.5 years ago we started a program to make the exiled journalists Dutch citizens, so they could apply for jobs in the Netherlands, and to make them resilient for living an exiled life as maybe a supermarket employee in some part of the Netherlands. We almost had no money left from donors because everybody said this is a lost case. But you know what? There's a revolution in Sudan, and the people on the streets in front of the military headquarters are listening to Radio De Banga. And I'm extremely proud of it. And actually, the 4 people that we managed to keep on staff have managed to become the persons of reference to, you know, that revolution behind the professors, the doctors, the people who were doing it. And why was that? Because they managed to work from a vision in which they said the government is not reformable, but there are many good people in Sudan. And I think that that is a notion for everyone that is active in this field, in my view. Also my esteemed colleagues from Sri Lanka and other places. We should never abandon the people that are suffering from the regimes. You see, we're now talking about Turkey has transformed under Erdogan. But actually 49% voted against Erdogan.
Yeah.
Are we going to leave those people behind? Are we leaving the 48% of the people who did not vote for Orban? Are we going to leave them behind? We are at the moment, and that is my worry, in Europe, in a situation where the central belief in that the values on which the solidarity work is based on are eroding. We are in a situation where, for example, we think that problems related to immigration or problems related to integration are deemed to be transforming our value systems into a security-based new set of norms which is alien to this solidarity notion. Let me tell you two things I heard last week. One of them is a woman from Algeria who said, you know what? Since the demonstration started, nobody stepped on a boat. You should think about that in Europe. The second notion is this. Young people were gathered by my ambassador in Sudan to find out how sustainable is that revolution. The young people said, look, we have a choice. We can die by transferring over the Mediterranean and drown, or we can go on the streets and try to change our own society. You know what they said? The risk to die our own, while fighting for our own society is at the moment lower than drowning in the Mediterranean. So I think that we have to think about those notions when we stand up for the values that we hold high.
Oh God, we nearly run out of time. Ramy, you are or have been supported by the Heinrich Böll Foundation. You are networked, you make readings, you have founded a bilingual cultural magazine called FAN. You have also founded an Arabic language newspaper. You write for Taz and other German media. You have supporters. Can you be called somewhat happy? Do you feel free from fear? I ask it because, on the other hand, I wrote some texts from you where I can follow that you are persecuted by the memory dogs, as one of your works is called. Only its sadness follows the poet, you have titled another text, and nobody noticed your death, a third. This sounds like a great melancholy. What could you free from it?
I need more time to think about this question.
Or tomorrow, make it...
Or maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
I'm better in writing than the answers.
These 2 minutes Ali has to tolerate, because Ali is behind us. He has to get his train, and we have to... No, please, shall I ask you another question?
No, I mean, if you would ask it in a different way, maybe I would find another answer. But well, I'm really I do believe that we live longer in our past than in our present, because the moment you just live it became part of the past. So we live in our memories more. And I'm proud my publisher is here also, so he would be happy about the book. Gedächtnis und writing, I mean, totally is kind of living for me. I mean, whatever is kind of this writing, poetry or journalism or whatever. And I have lived different kind of lives, and I was saved, and I survived death even. I survived 2 prisons in Jordan and Syria. Basically, the sadness, you still see it in my texts, but in a normal life, I'm a normal person. I have a lot of friends. I'm a happy person.
And that would be my next question, about your connections. I mean, we are talking more or less the whole day about intellectuals in a way, but there are hundreds of thousands of refugees from countries like Syria. Are you connected to them, or is it a kind of a bubble where poets, journalists live in?
No, well, I'm totally connected even with people inside Syria now, not only journalists, even normal people. Yeah. My father is still in Damascus. I am connected also with authors and artists and journalists who live also abroad in the diaspora. Also, like, we are cooperating with the Syrian Journalists Association, which is supported with Free Press Unlimited. We are in contact. I mean, when I left Abwab, the first newspaper, in 3 months I initiate FAN, and you cannot initiate a newspaper or magazine in 3 months with more than 100 contributors. Okay. So we are connected. We have, even here in Germany, authors from Syria, there are more than 150. this kind of community need to be supported, needs to have a platform, a voice, a place where they could show very far away of the other voices which they are talking and calling us with third party, like the refugees are doing that, the Syrians. We have voices, and I think it was important for me and still to speak by ourselves, because we have voices and we can talk about ourselves, and we know we don't need someone to talk on behalf of us.
Bashana, could you imagine spending your life forever in Germany?
Sorry, just well, you are asking all the questions I want to answer for Bashana. This is not fair.
Shall we change? Huh? Or at least never again at your home country?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated thing. I mean, it's like, because to a certain extent, the answer is like, it is going to be like that, actually. But at the same time, none of us want to make it as a kind of fate that we cannot fight back. So instead of succumbing to that kind of fixed fate, we just want to keep, it's one of the, I think it's the core of the, it's kind of a core belief or the hope that we all have in all the work that we do, the ability to go back, you know. Because the thing is, I think, I mean, in a country like Sri Lanka, for example, there's always a tendency to understand what is happening in Sri Lanka as a kind of some ethnic groups fighting each other for no reason. But there's a broader picture, which not many people, I mean, are interested about, which connects Sri Lanka to a bigger kind of conflict that is happening in the Indian Ocean. And what is happening inside is not that because people have gone mad, because there are quite a lot of players who are working behind the screen, which are making it to happen. And so, dying in Germany, I mean, sometimes I joke with my wife saying that it seems like, I mean, when we hear kind of the worst news, all this, you know, we get quite a lot of worst news, all bad news. And whenever we hear a new thing, I always used to say that it seems that we are going to die here. And so it means that, I mean, you will be exiled even in death, and you will not even share the kind of land that your friends and family were buried. But at the same time, I think the fight means the kind of collective will we have to go back, basically.
You mentioned your wife, and we were talking about individuals so far. I mean, family is a big aspect. With family members who are not on panels, who don't give speech, and so what happens to them in a situation you are?
Well, that's a big problem, because, for example, I mean, in my case, I mean, I had to be a little bit, I mean, always refer, the reference point is my personal life, but it doesn't mean that the whole stories are revolving around my life, because it just reflects the lives of many others who are outside, actually. So in my case, for example, my wife was she had a big social life while she was in Sri Lanka, because she was a trade union activist, a teacher, and a journalist as well, a freelance journalist. And the fact is that, I mean, after she came to Germany, she lost this social life she had. And so we became more independent, I mean, more dependent on each other than we were inside the country, actually, in every sense of the word. And but it has always been like, I think everyone in our group, for example, I think it has been the case even from the journalists who are in exile, activists who are in exile from other countries. It's something, it's some sort of a fixed situation that we are being forced into. And so, but I mean, in my case, I mean, for example, my wife keep working with the work we do, because she's also part of the group that we have formed as a journalist. Okay. And so it just continues, actually.
Christoph, is it enough to help journalists from foreign countries to be more or less integrated in which job soever, or do you consider it's important that the voices of exiled journalists should also become a constant voice in our media, not least as an advocate of all the refugees who are with us but have no voice?
I think it's important to help journalists who have been forced into exile to keep their voices and make their voices heard in whichever role they choose. And there are a number of different roles. If we try to categorize exile media that these journalists work for, there are the media like Amal, for example, that's mainly address a refugee population or a diaspora population, like FUN maybe. And there are other outlets, exile media outlets, who address their home audience. And all of these roles are legitimate. And I think for all of these roles, I think the main point is that if we help exiled journalists continue the work, is they stop being just refugees, people in need, but they can continue being active members of our society and their societies. And for us, it's not a big thing to do. It's just a little help we provide, but it's a major assistance that we can provide to their countries, and not just to these individuals, also to them. I mean, it enables them to fulfill their role and be the personalities they've chosen to be, and be political persons, for example, in many cases, intellectuals, but also to serve their countries, and either to help open their societies, help and open their publics from the outside, or even to return and be multiplicators of a democratic society in the future if the situation changes. But also for Germany, I mean, there's a lot that we can benefit from exiled journalists, and we're talking a lot about populist movements and tendencies to endanger press freedom here. And I think it's one way to learn and become more aware of the dangers that we're facing is by listening to people who have come and have had to flee from really closed societies.
Yeah, this is my question. Does it help? I mean, in many of our European societies, we have this distrust in those up there and against the elite, and many right-wing populist parties also count journalists as those up there. Can it be possible to raise awareness for the freedom of press as a very fundamental core of democracy just by explaining by draconian descriptions of the situations of journalists in different countries? Does it help to gain some sympathy for? Do you feel in the Netherlands or you in Germany that there's a better acceptance for journalists from foreign countries? The more people are confronted with the very, very bad examples for situations journalists are in.
I think that the current, let's say, the current crisis in trust in the media as a result of populist attack certainly has raised the awareness in Western democracies, but also across the world, that independent information is actually a super vital element of democracy. And I'm actually rephrasing something that Emin said, one of the problems is that the international assistance effort for support to independent media is 0.3% of the total inputs in development aid. So that tells you a little bit about the discrepancy between, I think actually personally, and of course I'm a journalist, so I'm biased, but I think actually in the current framework of the the transitions we are going through in globalization and technology, that the information infrastructure and the independent information infrastructure is actually the most important infrastructure that we have. And that, for example, in the European Union, it is actually more important than the agricultural or the food infrastructure, which we have solved in the last 50, 60 years, more or less. There's many problems, I know, but nevertheless, we're not taking that independent information infrastructure as relevant and as serious by supporting it as we are doing many other fields, like border control or rule of law. Well, actually, the rule of law. So there's many problems, but the 0.3%, that shows you that we need a real mental shift in our thinking about development, human rights assistance, but also if we are serious about countering the current anti-democratic tendencies in Europe, we have to start getting our act together. And that will also help all of these guys.
These guys, Christoph, Bashana, Ramy, Leon, many thanks. The audience should now have the opportunity to ask some more questions. We have exactly 7 minutes, so please wait for the micro, then say your name, and then ask shorter questions than I did, please. Are there any questions? Or did we exhaust you? Or did the whole meeting exhaust you after 3 panels?
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for the nice panel. I don't have a question, it's just a note, because the word help kept repeating itself all the time. I just want to invite you to rethink of the terminology as well of help, because the moment you say we help them, you put yourself in one position and they are in the other, and you, of course, you lower them by saying helping them. So because I think it's a mutual support, maybe, and yeah, that's a quick note. Thanks.
The last question of the conference will ask Mr. or Mrs. Nobody. So we are done. No, there.
I'm a TV reporter at WDR Television, so public TV in Germany, and well, it's kind of, the question has to be made, because I was like, you put pressure on us. I just wanted to ask you guys, or actually this question goes to Mr. Willems. So you said that these, let's say, how did you call it, independent information infrastructure is not taken into account as seriously or as serious as other infrastructural issues in the European Union. You mentioned agriculture and others. So what are we facing, according to you, and what needs to be done by media outlets, if it's private or public media outlets within Europe, or within Germany or the Netherlands? I know it's a very broad question.
It's a very big question.
We can rediscuss it, but just shortly.
Just 2-3 notions. First of all, I think that, and this actually refers also to the very nice comment of the gentleman in the back, Free Press Unlimited works on a cooperative basis. And it is actually our understanding that the crisis that exists in many areas in repressive societies is not very dissimilar from the crisis in the media, but the opportunities are bigger. For example, in Germany, you have a public service broadcasting system which doesn't exist in many countries in the world. So the problem is this. The independent journalism within the information infrastructure is at super risk. There is no current income generation model that is sustainable for independent journalism. I'm not talking about television channels. They can earn money with amusement, with infotainment, etc., gaming, etc. But independent journalism as a vital function within the democratic information infrastructure that we need for the public to still feel that it controls what happens in the country and who takes decisions, that is under threat. And that is just as much under threat in Germany and the Netherlands by monopolization, by media ownership problems, etc. and by neglect of political institutions, as it is already in some cases lost in very repressive countries, where the media system has been completely taken over by one side of the political power.
Christoph, you would like to add something?
To the last question, one very concrete thing, not looking at media in Germany, but looking in media and the situation in countries where journalists have to flee their countries, is providing funds to assist exile media and exile journalists. And for example, in Germany, the German government is very reluctant to provide assistance to exile media. The Netherlands or Norway, or the Nordic countries in general, have a very different tradition there and are not as afraid. And in Germany, when we bring up this issue, we often hear, oh, these people may be activists, and Emin knows well, I think. We don't know if they'll really do independent reporting, unbiased reporting, or what will become out of them. And I think the other point is that people are afraid if they provide political support to exile media to have an exit strategy, because many exile media never become profitable, and it's difficult to get rid of them once you've started supporting them. Yeah, and that, having said that, yes, I absolutely agree also that, and that's one thing I take home from this conference, is that we should really not look at exiled journalists, exiled scientists, exiled artists as people we are helping, but yeah, these are journalists and scientists and so on.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Peter-Matthias, Gaede, for this wonderful panel. Continued luck, of course, to all of you in your bravery in trying to make journalism free worldwide. Now, you don't have to leave. You don't have to leave and you don't have to sit, because what we're going to do now, as a matter of fact, for the Roundup, und deswegen switche ich jetzt noch mal schnell ins Deutsche. Jetzt haben wir natürlich eine Menge gehört. Das war ein ganz, ganz langer Tag, viele Impulse, und Sie haben im Grunde schon die Endrunde schon eingeläutet, indem Sie gesagt haben, das nehme ich für mich heute mit, aber das tun wir natürlich mit den gesamten Partnern, und deswegen würde ich gerne Barbara Schelden von der Martin-Roth-Initiative, Mike Müller von der Philipp-Schwarz-Initiative nochmal auf die Bühne bitten und natürlich Sven Tetzler von der Körber-Stiftung. Das machen wir nochmal begleitet von einem Applaus. Vielen Dank. Ja, in der Tat, Christoph Dreyer hat ja im Grunde schon das Gefühl für die letzte Runde hier eingeläutet, nämlich was er für sich heute entzogen hat, was die Informationen betreffen, was die Neuerkenntnisse betreffen. Barbara Schelden, wenn Sie jetzt rückblicken auf die 3 Panels, bei einem waren Sie glücklicherweise und aktiv dabei, was nehmen Sie mit vom heutigen Tag?
Dass Exil ein komplexer Begriff ist und dass es eben ganz viele Identitäten gibt, jenseits des Exils. Wir sind Wissenschaftler, wir sind Künstler, wir sind Kulturschaffende und erst wirklich in einer zweiten Reihe Geflüchtete. Das ist eben, denke ich, eine ganz zentrale Message.
Das ist ja eine Thematik, die Ihr Brot und Butter ist, wenn Sie so möchten, beruflich. Gab es dennoch einen Moment, einen Impuls, wo Sie gesagt haben, Mensch, das hatte ich so noch gar nicht auf dem Schirm gehabt, das habe ich so noch gar nicht gewusst?
Ich denke, die Bedeutung von Netzwerken in all unseren Sektoren ist nochmal ganz, ganz deutlich geworden. Netzwerke, Austausch, wo es in mehrere Dimensionen geht. Einmal die Dimension Schutz, dass man eben im Gespräch bleibt, dann aber auch auf der anderen Seite die Möglichkeit, weiter im Kontakt zu bleiben, sein eigenes Feld weiter zu betreiben, auch wenn die Umstände schwieriger werden.
Mike Müller, was haben Sie vom heutigen Tag mitgenommen?
Ich denke, es geht mir ähnlich wie Frau Schelden im Sinne von viel Bestätigung von dem, was wir in der Planung und Umsetzung der Martin-Roth-Initiative schon gesehen haben und was sich jetzt im Austausch nochmal bestätigt, eben die Arbeit in Netzwerken und das, was Khalid nochmal gesagt hat. Also es geht nicht darum, dass die Martin-Roth-Initiative als Helfer auftritt, sondern dass wir als Netzwerk und Kooperationspartner Plattformen anbieten und dass wir das am besten tun, indem wir mit all denen zusammenarbeiten, die schon lange im Feld sind oder die neu dazukommen und da möglichst in Kooperation gehen und in den Austausch mit Menschen unabhängig von dem Label, was andere Leute denen vielleicht aufdrücken möchten. Ja.
Sven Tesser, für der Körber-Stiftung und Ihrer Abteilung ganz besonders haben wir es zu verdanken, dass wir all die Leute heute hier zusammengebracht haben und diese Erkenntnisgewinne miteinander austauschen konnten. Was waren für Sie so die besonderen Momente, wo Sie gesagt haben, Mensch, das ist ja wunderbar, das hatte ich so noch gar nicht auf dem Schirm?
Der Körber-Stiftung zu verdanken, dass wir den Ort haben, aber es sind wirklich sehr hochinteressante Leute hier gewesen, auch im Publikum. Dafür möchte ich mich von Seiten der Körber-Stiftung aus bedanken. Für mich sind 3 Punkte zentral gewesen, die ich mitnehme. Das eine ist, da knüpfe ich an das, was Barbara Sheldon gesagt hat, an. Exil ist einerseits für die Identitätsfrage wichtig, aber ich habe auch mitgenommen, dass zum Thema Wissenschaft, Kultur und Medien die Menschen ganz unterschiedliche Herkommen haben, ganz unterschiedliche Bedarfe haben, es ganz unterschiedliche Wünsche gibt. Insofern fühle ich sozusagen die Anfangsvermutung eher noch bestärkt, dass es da nicht eine Lösung gibt für Menschen im Exil, sondern wir haben heute sehr unterschiedliche Lösungen kennengelernt und ich glaube, die haben auch weiterhin ihre Berechtigung. Und das Zweite ist, weil ich mich gefragt habe, gibt es eigentlich Unterschiede zwischen Wissenschaft, Journalismus und Kultur? Und das ist jetzt sehr thesenhaft, aber vielleicht ist es so, dass wir bei Medien und bei Kultur auch Beispiele von Selbstermächtigung oder Selbsthilfe gesehen haben. Das Media Outlet aus Aserbaidschan oder auch das Syrian Network, das sind ja Beispiele, die hochinteressant sind, wo selber etwas entstanden ist, ohne staatliche Hilfe oder ohne Hilfe von Stiftungen. Das finde ich ganz besonders toll. Und ich möchte jetzt nicht vorgreifen, aber wir sind als Körber-Stiftung hier ja auch sehr aktiv mit dem Thema Advocacy und auch Öffentlichkeit. Und ich fühle mich eher darin bestärkt, dass es wichtig ist, auch dieses Thema, auch wenn der Begriff Exil möglicherweise problematisch ist, aber wie Frau Däufler hat gesagt hat, schaffen wir den Begriff ab, schaffen wir die Möglichkeit ab, darüber zu diskutieren. Ich fühle mich eher bestätigt, dass wir das weiter tun sollten, dass wir Räume schaffen müssen und auch Öffentlichkeit schaffen müssen für dieses Thema.
Christoph Dreyer, Sie haben ja im Grunde schon gesagt, für Sie ganz wichtig, dass wir vielleicht nach dem heutigen Tag eben, sei es Wissenschaft, Kultur und Journalismus, eben nicht durch die Hilfebrille, dass wir diesen Leuten helfen, diese Perspektive. Vertiefen Sie den Gedanken nochmal.
Ja, also, tatsächlich, also ich habe zum einen gesehen, dass es sehr viele Gemeinsamkeiten auch gibt, bei allen Unterschieden natürlich im Detail, aber dass es doch sehr viele strukturelle Ähnlichkeiten gibt zwischen den Situationen, in denen sich Journalistinnen und Journalisten im Exil, Wissenschaftlerinnen, Wissenschaftler, Künstlerinnen, Künstler im Exil befinden. Ein Wort, das mich sehr angesprochen hat, war das Wort von der Practice of Necessity, dass diese Menschen weitermachen, weil sie müssen. Das ist das, was sie tun. Das ist ihre Identität oder ein wichtiger Teil ihrer Identität. Und ja, das andere ist, dass Exil nicht einfach das Ende ist, sondern das ist ein Anfang, es ist was Neues, es ist ein Teil an neuen Identitäten, die sich weiterentwickeln. Und genau, ich glaube, wichtig ist, dass man sich auf Augenhöhe begegnet, dass man in einen Austausch tritt und offen ist für das, was da passiert.
Barbara Sheldon, wir haben den ganzen Tag über die Herausforderungen in Wissenschaft, Kultur und Journalismus gesprochen. Wie bereits schon gesagt, viele Gemeinsamkeiten, die ein oder andere Unterschiede auch. Was kann der eine vom anderen lernen? Haben Sie dort vielleicht Punkte, wo man anknüpfen kann, wo die einzelnen Disziplinen voneinander lernen können?
Ich denke, was wir gemeinsam haben, ist, dass wir die Chance haben, mit ganz faszinierenden Menschen zusammenzuarbeiten. Das war doch eine der Take-Home-Messages, die Wissenschaftler, Künstler, Kulturschaffende, die hier aufgetreten sind. Was für faszinierende Menschen, was für eine Bereicherung für uns, an alle, für unser Land. Ich denke, dass wir da auch noch dran arbeiten können, das noch deutlicher zu machen in die Öffentlichkeit, wie wir eigentlich auch davon profitieren.
Mhm. Mike Müller, auch die Frage an Sie, was kann der eine oder andere, was können die Disziplinen voneinander lernen, wo gibt es Synergies, wie man auf Neudeutsch heutzutage so schön sagt?
Ich denke überall, also sowohl im strategischen als auch in der politischen Arbeit, wenn es eben dann darum geht, auch vielleicht diese Öffentlichkeitsarbeit, die Herr Tetzlaff jetzt erwähnt hat, zu machen, dass wir aus den unterschiedlichen Bereichen da zusammenkommen, aber auch im Operativen, wie Frau Sheldon das gesagt hat, wir sind ja schon im Kontakt und eben da voneinander zu lernen, dass man im Austausch ist mit Leuten, die schon seit 28 Jahren diese Nahbegleitung macht und sich auch über die Bereiche hinweg und die verschiedenen verschiedenen Kulturmedien zusammentut und sich austauscht. Und da sehe ich auf jeden Fall viele Möglichkeiten.
Sven Tetzlaff, all diese faszinierenden Persönlichkeiten, denen wir heute zuhören durften, haben eins gemeinsam. Sie sind in Deutschland, sie sind in diesem Land, fungieren, agieren in diesem Land. Sie haben schon bereits in Ihrer Anfangsrede heute Morgen gesprochen. Welche Verantwortung trägt Deutschland hier insbesondere?
Das ist ein großes Wort, die Verantwortung, aber ich glaube in der Tat, dass durch diese Entwicklung der letzten Jahre auch das Thema Exil in der Geschichte nochmal eine ganz neue Wahrnehmung bekommen hat. Das ist nie vergessen worden, da gab es immer Bemühungen, aber wir merken jetzt auf eine faszinierende Weise, dass beide Dinge zusammenkommen und da wird tatsächlich nochmal deutlich, dass das eigentlich ein Teil der Zivilisation ist, dass es möglich ist, dass Länder andere Menschen aufnehmen, ihnen Schutz gewähren, Menschen, die verfolgt sind. Und wir sehen eben die ganzen Entwicklungen, die hochproblematisch sind, mittlerweile ins Kernland von Demokratie oder den Kernkontinent hineinragen, nämlich Europa. Wir erleben ja, dass Menschen auch sich nicht mehr sozusagen nach Amerika begeben, in dieses ursprüngliche Freiheitsland, weil auch dort die Situation mittlerweile schwierig wird, beispielsweise für Menschen mit muslimischem Glauben. Und ich glaube, dass wir deshalb daran gut beraten sind, hier dafür Aufmerksamkeit zu schaffen und dafür sozusagen auch zu werben, dass es ein Teil der Zivilisation und der Kultur dieses Landes ist, sich für das Exil einzusetzen.
Christoph Dreyer, als Vertreter von Reporter ohne Grenzen sind Sie natürlich bestens situiert, um die Situation von Journalisten einzuschätzen. Gibt es etwas, was Sie aus Ihrer Erfahrung heraus den Kollegen in den Bereichen Wissenschaft und Kultur mit auf den Weg geben würden?
Oh, ich habe eigentlich mehr geguckt, was ich von Ihnen mitnehmen kann. Ich war zum Beispiel beeindruckt von diesen großen Zahlen, die Sie da aufrufen, dass Sie gleich 50 Stipendien anbieten können pro Jahr. Das finde ich bewundernswert. Also da können wir, glaube ich, auch noch was lernen. Was mir auffiel, was vielleicht speziell ist bei den Medienschaffenden, ist, dass da die Möglichkeit, sich zusammenzuschließen, als Exilmedien mehr Sichtbarkeit, mehr Impact zu erzielen als Einzelne. Vielleicht, ich weiß nicht, ich habe zwischendurch mal überlegt, wie das in den anderen Bereichen aussehen könnte, weiß ich nicht genau, aber vielleicht gibt es da auch Möglichkeiten.
Und die gleiche Frage auch an Sie. Gibt es Bereiche, vielleicht Empfehlungen, die Sie an die Kollegen in den Bereichen Journalismus und Kultur weitergeben könnten?
Ja, ich denke, weiterhin zusammenarbeiten und einfach schauen, dass man gemeinsame Botschaften hat, sich da vielleicht auch mal mit Statements äußern, dass es dann eben keine Vereinzelung ist, sondern dass in ganz vielen Bereichen wir eben mit diesen Themen zu tun haben von Flucht und Exil und wir das durchaus auch nach außen kommunizieren können.
Und gibt es etwas Spezifisches, was Sie lernen können aus den beiden Bereichen?
Ganz viel Faszinierendes. Also ich denke auch, wir könnten davon lernen, dass wir viel mehr kommunizieren von den Journalisten. Ich denke, wir könnten auch Kulturschaffende noch viel stärker, Veranstaltungen sind schon vor meinem inneren Auge entstanden, die wir also gemeinsam bestreiten könnten.
Mike Müller, wo sind die verbindenden Erkenntnisse? Was können Sie lernen, was können Sie auch übertragen?
Ja, lernen sicherlich ganz viel, auch weil wir noch so jung sind. Und hier vor allem, denke ich, ist es für uns interessant, das, was wir schon gesehen haben, was an Mentoring-Programmen und das, was so hervorgehoben wurde, wie wichtig irgendwie diese Netzwerkbildung und diese Unterstützernetzwerkung und dieses nahe Begleiten ist. Also so, das ist was wir auch noch als Herausforderung sehen bei der Martin-Roth-Initiative, dass eben in den Kulturinstitutionen auch diese Netzwerke gesponnen werden und ich glaube, da können wir viel von den anderen lernen. Zum anderen sicher können wir einiges bieten, weil wir über das Auswärtige Amt einerseits die praktische Umsetzung dieser Schutzaufenthalte finanziert bekommen, aber auch die begleitende Forschung zum Thema Relocation, nennen wir es halt auf Neudeutsch oder auf Englisch, zu dem wir auch publizieren und wir haben da draußen auf dem Tisch eine erste Publikation zu diesem Thema ausgelegt, wo in dem Bereich Menschenrechte, Kunst und Kultur eben geschaut worden ist, wie wirkt sich denn das auf die Gastorganisationen, auf die Communities zu Hause, aber auch auf die Leute, die rausgehen, aus und was gibt es für Herausforderungen. Und da im Austausch mit den anderen Bereichen zu bleiben, ist für uns ganz wichtig und dieses Netzwerk wollen wir weiter spinnen.
Sven Tetzlaff, wir sind schon fast am Ende eines langen, produktiven, inhaltsreichen Tages. Was nehmen wir mit? Wie geht es weiter? Der kleine Blick in die Zukunft. Was machen wir mit den vielen Erkenntnissen des heutigen Tages?
Ich glaube, ich kann jetzt nur für die Körber-Stiftung sprechen. Das ist für uns ja ein Pilot gewesen. Also die Überlegung, bringen wir diese unterschiedlichen Bereiche Wissenschaft, Medien und Kultur einmal zusammen und schauen mal nach dem Austausch. Das müssen wir nochmal für uns so nachauswerten, aber ich fand das hochinteressant, was ich heute gehört habe. Ich möchte auch mich nochmal bedanken bei den Kooperationspartnern. Wir sind ja keine fördernde Institution als Körber-Stiftung, sondern wir wollen ein Thema mit vorantreiben, Sichtbarkeit schaffen, aber auch natürlich Vernetzung. Und wir haben hier sehr profitiert einfach von der großartigen Expertise der Institutionen, die hier ja sehr materiell auch Menschen im Exil unterstützen. Also ich glaube, wir werden mit Sicherheit nochmal uns auch gemeinsam Gedanken machen, weil das ja nicht nur unsere Veranstaltung war, sondern wir das ja gemeinsam auch beschlossen haben, dass wir es machen wollen und da auswerten und gucken, was ziehen wir raus, wo können wir vielleicht Dinge wieder aufgreifen.
Exilland Deutschland, Herausforderungen in Wissenschaft, Kultur und Journalismus. Der Dank geht an die Martin-Roth-Initiative, Philipp-Schwarz-Initiative, Reporter ohne Grenzen und der Körber-Stiftung, dass sie einen solchen heutigen wichtigen Tag für uns zusammengestellt haben. Nochmal einen großen Applaus. Vielen Dank. Jetzt. Es soll nicht unerwähnt bleiben. Natürlich haben wir viele Protagonisten heute bereits schon gehört, viele wichtige Personen hier auf der Bühne gehabt. Nicht minder wichtig waren viele Personen, einige Personen, die Sie nicht im Saal gesehen haben, die aber genauso wichtig waren für das Gelingen, nämlich unsere Übersetzer. Auch denen nochmal vielen Dank, großes Dank. Ja. Ja, da bleibt mir eigentlich nicht mehr viel übrig, als mich für den heutigen schönen Tag zu bedanken, für die Begegnungen, die es uns möglich gemacht haben. Sven Tetzlaff, wie geht es heute noch weiter?
Wie geht es heute noch weiter? Wir laden Sie alle ein, das habe ich in der Begrüßung schon gemacht. Das wird ein spannender Abend sein heute Abend, da bin ich ganz sicher. Liao Yewu ist ständig unterwegs, jetzt momentan in Presseanfragen und wir werden sicherlich noch einiges davon hören. Wenn Sie können, wenn Sie sich einrichten können, bleiben Sie heute Abend. Ansonsten, wir haben auch ein Newsletter vom Bereich Lebendige Bürgergesellschaft in der Körber-Stiftung. Finden Sie auf unserer Seite, wenn Sie weiter über Exil informiert bleiben wollen. Wir sind auf Twitter, haben einen Account. Die Körber-Stiftung ist auf Facebook, also stay tuned und versuchen Sie einfach, uns gewogen zu bleiben, damit wir Sie wieder ansprechen können und begeistern können, mit dabei zu sein. Und wenn das schon das Schlusswort wäre, würde ich ganz gerne Ali Aslan für diese wunderbare Tagesmoderation danken. Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Dankeschön. Dankeschön. So. Dankeschön. Dankeschön. Hat Spaß gemacht. Vielen Dank.